Yeah.
Main speaker, Anna T. Give her a big hand.
I'm Anna. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is June 4th, 2005. I have a sponsor. I have sponsees. I have a new commitment. I just got a commitment and made this my home group just now. And I am really glad to be alive today. I moved to Prescott just about a month ago. I've been the last 8 years in Florida, but I actually got sober down in Scottsdale. So I'm a little bit nervous. I'm a lot nervous. And I intend to tell you what happened, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And I hope to share my experience with the steps with you. But having done this in the past, I can go off on tangents. So I'm just trying to set the stage for myself so I can keep on track. Excuse me, and I forgot my water. So I had my first drink when I was 6 years old, and my last drink when I was 36. Thanks, Mike. Oh, and I just want to acknowledge Mike because he asked me to speak, 10 days, 2 weeks ago. And so I've been doing this every day for the last 2 weeks. So I've already told you guys everything. I made a commitment. I was going to read the 164 pages all over again because I haven't done that in a while because I really, I wanted to be great tonight. And I didn't get through all of those pages, but I'm so grateful that he asked me to speak because I have gone to a meeting every single day since then for the last 2 weeks. I mean, I've gone to meetings my whole 15 years. But I feel completely reinvested in my sobriety. Moving here, there's elements of being a newcomer. I've moved quite a few times in my 15 years, and every time I've moved, like when I moved to Florida, it was like being a newcomer all over again, except for the drinking part. I mean, thank you, God, I haven't had to want to have a drink in a long time. So my first drink, I was 6 years old, last drink 36. My mom handed me a glass of scotch in the Buick, no seatbelts, in the front seat, on the way to the country club, and asked me if I would hold it. And I said, well, can I try it? She said, yeah, you can try it. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And she gave me, she was so impressed that her 6-year-old daughter loved scotch. Well, people usually, I learned years later, right, that's a refined palate, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of how my drinking went, especially in my family, lots of positive feedback. The more you drank in my family, yeah, right on. My brother is a Marine, so being able to keep up with him, there was lots of badges of honor. I mean, I learned, and I drank really heavily. I'm an alcoholic, yeah, so I drank really heavily. And just to qualify a couple of my pitiful, incomprehensible, demoralizing, generic stories, right? Because you guys don't need the nitty-gritty. We've all been there. We moved to Arizona from Maryland. So I've lived in 7 states. We moved to Arizona from Maryland when I was 10, and I hated it. I was so mad at my family. And I went back to Maryland a year later to go see my best friend Susie. And I remember, this is crazy stuff to think, nobody said anything about it either. We went to the swimming pool one night, parents dropped us off. And I remember those glass bottle green Mickey beers. And we were drinking those, and I couldn't get enough. I drank as much as I possibly could that night. And I think about the next day, I got on an airplane the next day to come back to Arizona. We were out till forever. How did an adult not know? I mean, I'm sure I reeked like a brewery. I was 11 years old, for goodness sake. Nobody said anything. I mean, that's how my drinking was. All of my drinking, nobody said anything. So when I got sober, people were looking at me like, what, you're an alcoholic? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, how do you not know I'm an alcoholic? Do you not remember me like, screaming at you in the middle of the night, at the middle of the party, in front of everybody, and I don't remember any of that? Like, do you not remember when I did that? I've been granted a lot of grace. And so that was 11 years old. 7th grade, drinking as much Jack Daniels as possible. All the other girls were like, oh, it's too much. When I was 15, so I'm 15 years old, I'm a freshman in high school, I'm very depressed. I was depressive. That seems to have been lifted this year. As long as I exercise every day, those emotions don't catch up with me, and I promised myself when I moved to Arizona that I would give myself a shot. I've been on and off medication for depression mostly in my 15 years. So 15 years old, I'm depressive, I'm suicidal, and I go down to Tucson. I had done drama, speech and debate in high school, and I go down to Tucson for a state tournament in speech, and I win. Like, I win the whole state. Like it's a BFD, right, for a 15-year-old. And nobody in my family was there. And they hadn't been there for anything. Like, I was a really good gymnast as a kid. They didn't show up to my meets. They went to all my brother's stuff, but I don't have a resentment. They didn't come to my piano recitals. I was very gifted at the piano as a child. And so here I am. I'm suicidal, just in general, as a freshman in high school. And I win this whole thing. I mean, it was awesome. I was awesome. And so we're back at the hotel, a bunch of high school kids, and Bartles and James, my new pals. And all the upperclassmen thought that was great. Sure, yeah, you want another one? Have another one. I mean, it's not their fault that I am an alcoholic, not by any stretch of the imagination. I thought, I'm getting away with it. They think this is great. And I remember that night, the red Solo cups, and it's the middle of the night, and I come to. I mean, I don't know if I passed out or if I blacked out. I probably I don't know. Never get those memories back. I come to, and everybody's asleep. And I'm like, what? Why is everybody asleep? The party's not over. I still want to party. So I go around to all the different hotel rooms, because there's a massive high school students at this hotel down in Tucson. I wake up my friend Vince. Come on, let's drink. And I think he, entertained me for a few minutes to drink, and, went to sleep that night, and I was off to the races. So that was like a big turning point for me in my drinking. I was drinking as much as I could, as often as I could, which really just looked like kind of weekends for me, mostly. And the suicidal thoughts were gone. I wasn't suicidal anymore. And I don't realize any of that till I get sober. And I come in here and I do the work, and I look back and go, man, I was a mess. I was a mess. And nobody said anything. Nobody noticed. So drinking in high school, and my 16th birthday, my best friend gave me a beer. I'm in the bathroom drinking a beer in between classes. I thought I was a really good kid. So high school, I get in trouble senior year in high school. My parents are like, you have just become responsible. We're not paying for college. They ground me till I get a job, and I end up paying for my first year of college at NAU. And it took me 8 years to get an undergraduate degree. I went to 4 colleges / universities because I had a really, really good time, or not a really good time, however you want to look at it. I'm alive today, thank you, God. And I was at NAU for a few years. I was at ASU for a few years. Went to Mesa Community College, went to Scottsdale Community College. So I graduate, and when I graduate, shortly thereafter, I meet what is now my ex-husband. And, if I only knew then. A month after we're together, he asked me to marry him, and we get married a year later. So, I might be a little codependent. Been working on that one, too. So drinking is just part of my life. I remember 21 years old, my best girlfriend, who's down in the valley, who I called from the parking lot to talk to before I came in, who thinks she remembers our last drink together. Now, mind you, she was probably hammered last night, so I'm not sure she remembers much. But it was really good to talk to her because she's been constant in my life since I was 10 years old. So I get married to this guy and drinking. Oh, that's what I was telling you. We're 21 years old. Her and I are like, yeah, we're alcoholics. Clink, drink more. And that's how I drank, as much as I could. Get married, moved around a lot. He was a college football coach. I thought that was going to be great because I could just move every 4 years. I was really interested in no commitments anywhere, just be college football wife and, drink wine with the wives. Didn't quite work out like that. We have 2 amazing children. They are now 18 and 20 years old, and they're in college. I'm an empty nester, thus the reason to move back to Arizona. And I drank a lot. I was a blackout drinker, and that didn't seem to bother anybody but me. I'm the only person it seemed to bother. We're living in Flagstaff for like the second or third time. We met in Flagstaff. We really wanted to have our home there. And I end up volunteering on a congressional campaign. The candidate wins. So I look at my husband and I'm like, I'm going to Washington, D.C., And he's like, well, okay, I'm coming because you supported me as a college football coach. And I should have known then. But so I move my family, my husband and my 2 little kids to Washington, D.C., and I think I have arrived, right? I am now part of something greater than myself. I'm serving my country. This is it. I've arrived. And really, in the year and a half that we were there, the congressman I worked for was very abusive to me. He fired me every other day. And didn't follow through on some financial commitments or career commitments he made to me. And so I was very resentful. I have a husband at home who's mad at me because he's decided to stay home with our kids, but somehow that's my fault. And I took responsibility for that in my amends to him. And all that's happening is I am becoming more discontent, and I'm drinking more. And when I leave Capitol Hill to go home, I take the shuttle and it stops at the mall, and I stop at the Mexican restaurant because it's like, I got 10 minutes for the shuttle to the apartment. I'll just get 1 beer. Mind you, I've been drinking in the basement of the RNC for the last 3 hours because I think that's where that's where everything happens. You got to make all your deals down there with the rubbing elbows. I wasn't rubbing elbows with anybody. There might have been some really dirty old men hitting on me, buying me wine, but that's as far as any kind of thing happened there. So I'm drinking wine, and then I drink beer at the mall, and then I go spend $600 at Ann Taylor, and I go home like, isn't this great? I mean, I was a mess. I was a mess. I was drinking every night when we lived in D.C. Friday nights, I would drink 2 cases of Coors. In college, I drank Coors Light, but now I'm an adult, so I'm really going to drink the good stuff. I'm drinking Coors, and I'm watching crime shows, so I'd be like, yeah, cocktails and crime shows. Like, I was really sophisticated. And I remember, I still have the journal that I had that inspiration that I know that I'm going to be a presidential speechwriter one day. I am. And I start writing out like presidential speeches while I'm drunk, right? I still have that journal, which is just a bunch of squiggles. There's absolutely nothing coherent there. We moved back to Arizona because that didn't work, right? They didn't appreciate me. Don't you know who I think I am? They didn't appreciate me. So we're out of money, and it's not working. Capitol Hill is not the end-all, be-all, greater than I am. My dad pays for us to move back to Scottsdale, and 11 months before I got sober, so I got sober in June, so we moved back, and I'm drinking, and I'm working at a law firm, and blah, blah, blah. I'm a mess, but I think I'm functional. And 11 months before I got sober, so July of 2004, my husband and kids went out of town to go visit his family in southeastern Arizona. Awesome. I didn't want to go. Why would I want to go be with his really nice, kind, fairly religious, ethical family? I don't want to do that. I don't want to be around those people. So he leaves, and I call my girlfriend who I was on the phone with just now, actually. And I go drinking with her and a couple other girlfriends, and we go to some nightclub in Scottsdale, Arizona. And they're done. These girls want to go home, and I'm like, what? No, I'm not. I don't want to go home. I see a friend from Capitol Hill, right? Because I had such a good time on Capitol Hill. I made so many friends. By the way, when you go there, they say, if you want a friend, get a dog. And I thought they were joking, and that's actually the truth. That was my experience of Capitol Hill. And so I see this guy that I knew from Capitol Hill, and I said, hey, I want to stay. Will you give me a ride home? Yeah, no problem. I'll give you a ride home. So what I remember from that point on is his buddy bought me a drink, handed me a drink. I drank that drink. I have fuzzy recollection of walking to the car with my friend and his two friends. And then I have fuzzy recollection of the three of them walking me into his house, which doesn't make sense today because they were supposed to drive me home. And then I see my other friend from Capitol Hill. Now these are people who are making like legislative decisions in Washington, D.C. Not that sorry, I didn't need to throw that in there. And he kind of looks at me, and I walk into the house with three men, and the next thing I remember is flashing highway lights as they're driving me home, and I woke up the next morning in my bed by myself, fully clothed, which never happened, by the way, when I got drunk. I never slept with all my clothes on. So I have worked through what I believed happened that night, and I've worked through it enough that I can share it with you today, because what happened that night is not okay. And it really set the stage for a lot of things for me. The next day I called a friend of mine who was a DEA agent and asked about, can I get my blood tested? Can I get my urine tested? And I found out a couple years after that happened, he didn't help me at all. He said, well, let's go to lunch and talk about it. Which, by the way, those two guys that walked me into the house were at lunch. It was really, really bizarre. And I found out a couple years later that the guy, the DEA agent who was supposed to help me, was actually addicted to violent gay porn. So he wasn't interested in helping me. He just wanted to hear my sick story. This is my disease. That is where my disease took me to. So, come around April, I get online, I look for an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. I know I have a problem. I've known for years that I'm an alcoholic, but now this is my life is kind of in the gutter, according to me. And I get too scared, I'm sure, if I go to this meeting, because it sounded like it was in somebody's backyard. I'm not going to somebody's backyard for a meeting. Forget it. I don't go to the meeting. June 3rd, my husband and kids were out to dinner with another family, and the wife had previously told me that her husband was an alcoholic. So we ordered beers, and he orders a coffee. And I look at him and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And he looks at me, and now I know. And he looks at me, he's like, are you an alcoholic? I go, yeah. And he stands up, he puts his hand out, and he says, I'm Jeff, and I'm an alcoholic. And I take his hand, and I'm like, I'm Anna. It was so awkward. I'm Anna. He goes, are you an alcoholic? And I said, yeah, I'm an alcoholic. And he said, do you want to get sober? I said, yeah, I want to get sober. He said, okay, do you want to go to a meeting? I said, yeah, I want to go to a meeting. He didn't believe me because I was totally willing. I was done. I was done. And he didn't believe me. He's like, okay, you're going to have to call me. I'll take you to a meeting. You're going to have to call me tomorrow. I'm like, okay, I'll call you. I didn't understand that we don't follow through So he didn't believe me, and I did. I called him the next day, and he picked me up, and I went to a speaker meeting on a Saturday night at the North Scottsdale Fellowship Club, and the guy was in a suit, he was old school AA, and the only thing I remember from his speech, his lead, was his wife had put out the cigarettes that he had, passed out in bed with cigarettes. Like, it's the only thing I remember from that night, from that whole thing. The next day he calls me, he goes, "You want to go to a meeting again?" I said, "Sure, I'll go to a meeting again." So at that meeting, they offered me a 24-hour chip. I thought they were doing that just for me. Like, he had set it all up, it was just for me, this 24-hour chip. And at that meeting, besides the chip, we had read in the 12 and 12, the 5th step, where it talks about the alcoholic feels alone in a crowded room. Done. I have stayed ever since that point because I had felt that way my entire life. I didn't know how to articulate it. I didn't know anybody else felt that way. And here I was in a room of people. There's about 20 people at that meeting that Sunday night. And I was home, and I've stayed. That changed my life, that point in time right there, that you guys understood what it feels like to be in a crowded room and feel all alone. What a gift. What an absolute gift to find my tribe. I heard somebody say that earlier, that I found my tribe, I found my people. So it took me a while to get the steps done, and I didn't get a sponsor, and I actually thought AA was going to be like my ladies' meetings in Washington, D.C., where I was going to go on the 3rd Thursday of every month. So when I start going crazy because I'm not going to meetings, I'm not doing the deal, I'm sitting in a meeting, again, about 20, 25 people, and it's the tables are set up in a square. So the sharing is going around the table, and it's on the 12th step. Well, I had already done all the steps by myself, so I'm good. I'm ready for this 12-step conversation. And it's going around the room, and I can feel the momentum, right? Like crack the whip, or if you're ice skating and you're the last person on the line, and I feel the momentum coming around the room, and it's building, and it's building, and it's building, and it gets to me, and I fall apart. I just fell apart. I was a mess, and I hadn't admitted it to myself. I hadn't admitted it to anybody else. I didn't trust anybody. I didn't want a sponsor. I didn't want help. Don't you know who I think I am? And I fell apart. And a woman came up to me after the meeting and said, "I will be your temporary sponsor." And she saved my life. She absolutely saved my life. She had like 2 years. Her name was Catherine. She was beautiful. I wanted what she had, even though I didn't know like that was what we talk about at the time. And the very first thing she taught me, so I brought my book, the very first thing she taught me, rejection is God's protection. That saying has served me so well in a lot of forgiveness, in the story that happened before she told me that, and everything in the last 15 years, right? Because I'm sensitive. And if you seemingly reject me, I take it personally. But if I wait long enough and I'm quiet and I do the deal, God will show me that I've been protected. So rejection is God's protection. The very first thing I learned in this program that's not the very first thing I learned in this program. It's the very first thing my very first sponsor taught me. So she took me through the book. Right, so we did, she taught me the set-aside prayer. If you don't know the set-aside prayer, I'm happy to share that with you after the meeting, or ask somebody, find out about the set-aside prayer. She took me through all of these, everything, right? How many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism? I mean, all of these things. She said that's the first promise. That promise is of hope. So we went through line by line. We went through the contents. We went through the preface. And this woman taught me, and she was freely giving me what she had been given. She had been really taught really well about the history of AA, which admittedly is, I have not latched onto. I haven't been a person to read outside books about the history of AA. I have a lot of respect for people who do that, and I just learn from them in the meetings. So she works with me, I don't know, maybe 2 months, and she, taking care of herself, because you can't give away what you haven't got, checks into the Meadows in Wickenburg. And so the Meadows are also in Scottsdale now, but they were only in Wickenburg at that time. She was doing family of origin work, right? Because I don't know about you guys, but I got a lot of stuff I got to work on outside of this program. And she wasn't calling me back. Don't you know who I think I am? She's not calling me back. I'm freaking out. I need to talk to my sponsor. Where is she not helping me? So I got a different sponsor. And that woman sponsored me for years. And even when she wasn't my sponsor, because I switched sponsors a lot, I had a really lot of trouble trusting women. She stayed in my life until the day of her death, and she died with, I think she had like 40 years sober. She died earlier this year. So the first thing she had me do, which I have my sponsees do, and I'm happy to share again, is this 3 examples of each, and she taught me to write this down in the back of my book so it's always there. And I have my sponsees do the same thing. So I'll just give you a couple of them, right? So 3 examples of progression of drinking, 3 examples of financial problems, sexual problems, family and social problems. So I had to write all that out first, and then I had to go tell her, I had to read it to her. And the relief I got at the time, I didn't know what a gift it was. I physically felt something roll off my back, physically felt that. And I believe to this day that she saved my life. I mean, I was really, really sick when I got here. I was really sick. I had thought, I was watching that Robin Williams movie where I think he commits suicide and he's married. And and I thought I was dead. I mean, I was so sick when I got here. I called my sponsor and I'm like, am I dead and you're an angel and this is like some weird, different dimension? I was really a sick puppy when I got here. So she had me do that first step, and it gave me a lot of relief, enough to hang on to be able to get to the second step. So my first step, I'm powerless over alcohol. My life is unmanageable. Yes, and I got to do a very thorough first step by writing it out. It was really helpful to me. The second step, and then honesty is the principle around the first step. And what I learned is that I had been lying to myself for years. I mean, just absolutely lying to myself for years. I don't do that so much anymore, and if I do it, it's super subtle, and I have people in my life who I'm accountable to that will call me out on it, because that stuff, right? I like that saying. It says I'm either moving towards God or a drink's moving towards me. If I think I'm sitting still, I'm lying to myself, because this disease is always coming at me. So the second step came to believe the power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I had a very vivid second step, kind of that other dimension thinking that I was having. I was driving around. I was going to go to a professional happy hour mixer thing that I thought I needed to do. And on the way, all of a sudden I felt drunk. And I had been sober for a while. At that point, I probably had 10 months, I think, at that point. Somewhere around there. Oh, by the way, I never saw the promises, and they were on the wall in that club until I was 9 months sober. Like, it was this great, huge miracle that I found these promises that we read in every single meeting. So, I don't ever discount. We're all having a different experience. But the solution's the same. The solution is the same for all of us. So I thought I was drunk. Like, I felt drunk driving around. And I prayed and prayed and prayed. I even drove. My phone went dead. I was trying to call my sponsor. I even drove my work truck to a friend's house who I knew I was in the program. She didn't answer. Like, her boyfriend had, like, purple hair, and he was kind of mod. It scared me. Like, I was wigged out, and then right when I go to call my sponsor at a payphone, the quarter I'm using has a chip in it, and the quarter won't go in the this is when we had payphones, wouldn't go in the payphone slot. And all of a sudden, I don't know, it was all lifted. I had been praying nonstop. This whole episode was probably 30 to 60 minutes. And it was all lifted. And that was my second, like I had a second step experience because I believed and I hung on there long enough during this that I was okay. I knew I was going to be okay. I talked to my sponsor that day. I talked to my therapist that day. I knew I was going to be okay. I had additional second step. And to me, the second step, I go back to the second step a lot. I heard somebody recently say, faith is not believing God can, faith is believing God will. So I've actually really been trying to focus on that God does love me and he will keep me sober and provide for me and protect me and direct me in this lifetime. So I believed in God. I didn't think God believed in me. And I was probably 2 years sober till I had that, at the point that I had that realization that God was doing his part. It was me who was falling short. Third step, the first time I did the third step was in the Scottsdale Fellowship Club. This guy had a lot of time. He was pretty in tune to me, and I think back on it, and I don't know if it was appropriate or not when I think about it. I mean, he helped me, but I don't know, when I think about it, it just, we say women stick with women because 15 years later, I still question what that guy's motives were. But he did the third step with me the first time I ever did it, on our knees in the fellowship club. And I say the third step prayer most mornings. Most mornings I hit my knees, I say the 3rd, 7th, and 11th. And then I just try and talk to God, because rote prayers, those memorized prayers, I start to take them for granted. So I want to talk to God and, give my petitions and surrender my life to God. And like, okay, here's my plans, but I'm willing, whatever you've got for me today. 4th step, I think that sucker was 17 pages long. And when I did my 5th step with this woman, so she must have been 75 or more when I did my 5th step with her. And she pointed it out to me. I probably wouldn't have noticed it if she didn't point it out to me, because I'm pretty selfish. She said, watch what happens to me as you're doing your 5th step. And literally, she was the vessel for God. I was watching her kind of take on my stuff as I was sharing my 5th step with her. And she was willing to do that, right? She was willing to do that. So I did my 5th step. I did what she told me. I went home and I laid on the couch for an hour. I fell asleep. And I had heard people like these 6-step experiences, like, some burning bush kind of thing. So I had all these expectations, right? I was terrified that some glowing angel was going to show up, but I wanted that, and I got a fly. And I'm like, this must mean something. This must mean something. And literally, so you're giggling at me, but you might giggle more. So I looked up fly symbolism. I like animal symbolism, and fly symbolism is about being a warrior. And as my sobriety went on, that is who I hoped to be, was a warrior. So it's just interesting when flies show up in my life today. Sorry, it's hilarious. Okay, so that's 5th, 6th, 7th step. Okay, so I was in a meeting last night. We were talking about the 6th step. It's the best thing I've heard in a really long time. This guy shared, he had heard, right, that he wanted his character defects removed because he wanted stuff for himself. Instead of remove my character defects so I can be of maximum service to God, he wanted it removed so he could get what he wanted. I'm like, oh, we're not supposed to do that. Right? I want my character defects removed because I don't want to get in arguments with you, and I don't want to be a nasty person to you, and I want what I want. And so if you remove my character defects, maybe I'm going to be a better person. If I'm good enough, I'll get what I want, right? Because that's the God I was raised with. I learned a lot last night. Like, my character defects get in the way of God's God's use of me, not Anna's use of me. So 7 steps, say the 7-step prayer. 8, made my list. I will share with you, I was not on my list. Nobody taught me to put myself on my list until I was many years sober. And I believe that I suffered needlessly because I wasn't taught that. So I would encourage you to put yourself on your 4th step, at least for me, right? That if I could have looked at that I was resentful and hateful towards myself, and I hated myself, that maybe I could have cleaned that stuff up earlier, but I didn't. And, I'm still sober today. That's okay. It's just part of my story. But self-care and amends and taking care of myself and being good to me feels like it's been a long time coming. So 9th step, let me tell you about my favorite amends story is when I was in college, we were drunk and we stole these terracotta suns off the fence of this business, right? So we were in a bank, we're drunk, and we're doing rush, like kill as many brain cells as possible in 30 seconds, rush. And so we steal this terracotta sun. And so here I am, I don't know, right? That was 1990 maybe. Here I am 2005, 2006, 2007, and I have to go to that store. And I did it. I was terrified. It was my last on my list. And my sponsor, I call my sponsor in the parking lot. I have a wad of cash in my pocket. I'm willing. I'm terrified, but I'm willing because I want to be free. And, she's kind and prays with me or whatever. And I go inside. And I said, I need to talk to, a manager or an owner or somebody. And thank God the store was still there, right? And he comes over and I said, listen, I've been sober for a while, and part of my amends process is to clean this up. And when I was in college, we stole a sun. I don't see anything that looks like it around here, but I'm willing to pay whatever the price is or do whatever you need me to do to make that right. And he looked at me. He didn't talk for felt like forever. And he just kind of got this, I don't know how to describe, maybe remorseful look on his face. And he said, it's okay. Just stay sober. And I walked out of that shop free. I mean, just absolutely free. Most of my amends went okay. Nothing dramatic. That feels like the most dramatic one. Amends to my family. And I will tell you that my family, I work on my mom. I don't have a very healthy relationship with my mother. And my sponsor constantly supports me building that relationship with my mother. But I've had 2 episodes in sobriety where I was suicidal. They were both provoked by interactions with my mother. And so I'd rather be alive and on the planet than put myself in jeopardy with that. So it's been baby steps, and so that's just an ongoing process with my mom and my family. My brother as well. I haven't talked to my brother in years. It's my belief, right, wrong, or different, my opinion, I suppose. They like me drunk better because I don't have an opinion. I'm pretty much a doormat. I came in, I'm Anna, I'm a doormat. Anna, I'm sorry. I was sorry for everything all the time. And they don't like me with an opinion. So that's just my opinion. I get that there's all sorts of stuff behind that. It's just where I'm at today. So 10, continue to take personal inventory. So the first time I did this, I was in early sobriety. I had gone through Burger King drive-thru. I mean, I was early sobriety, but I knew about the steps. And I wasn't at 10 yet. The guy I was so rude to the guy, right, at the Burger King drive-thru. And I was just in that gap of sobriety where I couldn't live like that. God was working on me, and I could not live with myself being rude to anybody. He didn't deserve that. I mean, my first job ever was at Burger King, right? Have some compassion, for goodness sakes, Anna. I went home and I called him, right? Promptly admitted it. And I try and do that today. I've apologized for things that bother me that the other person's like, wait, hello, nobody cares, right? Because I'm I'm scared of this disease, and I'm scared of hurting you, right? I don't want to hurt you. That is really painful to me to know that my actions have hurt another person. Okay, I'm codependent, but I'm okay with that piece of it today. Sat through prayer and meditation, conscious contact. So I meditate every morning. That has evolved. I believe that that has helped me quiet my brain and help me to be a better listener. I'm actually really interested in you. I want to know who you are. I want to know what makes you tick. I'm really interested, and I can be quiet and I can listen. And I believe that that's because of meditation. And 12, spiritual awakening. Those, to me, semantics, spiritual awakening, spiritual experience, I don't know the difference. I just know that God shows up in my life in miraculous ways all the time. All the time. I'm grateful to be in Prescott. I was, 7 years sober when I moved to Florida. I moved to Florida because we were living in Scottsdale. My ex-husband had moved to Florida with his now wife and left the kids in Arizona, and they were going to just go visit a few weeks a year in Florida. And I was drowning. I was absolutely drowning. I financially couldn't do it. I was trying to keep up with the Joneses. That's totally on me, right? Instead of humble myself and live in lesser means. And he kept saying, well, you can't handle it. Send the kids to Florida. I'm not sending my kids to Florida. And eventually, and my sponsor was like, I knew you were going to Florida. Sold everything I owned, packed up my car. He flew out, flew the kids back to Florida, drove to Florida sight unseen. I lived in the Daytona and Flagler County area for 8 years. I was active in sobriety and AA there. The last year that I was there, I was a counselor at an addiction, inpatient for women. They could bring their children up to 6 years old. And I did that for the last year that I was in Florida. And that changed me. It just absolutely changed me. I worked with amazing therapists who cared deeply about these women, about our clients. I was the only one on staff that was in sobriety. And I still keep in touch with a lot of those women. We've done Zoom meetings together in my time home. I've just been home from Florida for a few months now. I was in Phoenix for the first couple of months. And the last thing that I want to share, because we're getting close, is I looked up, right? I was going to have notes, and I was going to rock this thing. The one thing I did do was I wrote out, because I really struggled with God. I still struggle with God, right? I'm a God of my misunderstanding, or, I guess I do have some sort of understanding, but I struggle because my experience with God is when I was a kid, I would go down on Sunday mornings, I'd be the first one awake, and I'd turn on the TV, and I would inevitably, every time on a Sunday, inevitably end up on the TV church channel. And every time, insanity, every time the preacher would end up hell, fire, and brimstone, it would scare the crap out of me. So that's my first memory of any kind of God thing. And then I remember as a kid, again, not cognizant of this until I get sober, I really was confused. I just feel like a dummy when I say this, but it's true. I was really confused between Jesus, Santa Claus, and the president. It was confusing. They were all like this power, and if you were good, you'd get what you want. That's how I looked at it. So, I grew up Catholic, and so I looked up in the book, all the names and all the times that God is mentioned. So I looked on Google. I cheated on Google. And there was different references. The highest number I saw was 400 different references to God in the big book. So I'm just going to read all the different names because I've gone through iterations of God, right? God's been a coach for me. God's been the son. God's been, not Santa Claus anymore. So the book says, power greater than myself, spirit of the universe, God personal to me, love, superhuman strength and direction, Christ, him, creative intelligence, universal mind, spirit of nature, czar of the heavens, friend, that one was really helpful to me, creator, father of light. And then the word God, there's just a bazillion references to that actual word. Living creator, supreme being, powerful guiding creative intelligence, great reality, presence of infinite power and love, maker, director, principal, father, employer, sunlight of the spirit, higher power, all-powerful creator, presence and power of God, source of power so much greater than yourself. So I hope and I pray for you guys. I'm big on prayer. I got baptized when I was 4 years sober, and I've been baptized in the Holy Spirit gift of speaking in tongues. So I am constantly praying. Believe in the power of prayer, and I pray for all of you guys. I hope you find a God that works for you. You are his favorite because it's your God. I am God's favorite because it's my God, very personal to me. I don't know that I can explain it to you. I just know that it works. Thanks.
Okay. Let's give another big round of applause for Anna.